All right. Today is August 2nd. This is the District 96 School Board meeting at 7 p.m. And I guess welcome maybe to the official start of school since we have a very long summer break. I'll have to remember if I can figure out how to run this show. Okay, so Kathy, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Ms. Gunn? Here. Ms. Kalick?
Here.
Mr. Barhol?
Here.
Mr. Hunt?
Here.
Ms. Claps?
Here.
Mr. Muirhead?
Here.
Quorum is present.
Okay. Is there any public comment?
There is not.
All right. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda? The only thing I'm going to ask Martha is Ramesh or Joel, is Ramesh going to join us? I don't see him on the screen.
He's
so
not scheduled to join us.
We did not.
Okay, that's fine. I
Yeah,
just
if
was
there's
going
more
to.
questions after we look at the construction update, we could have him come to the August 16th meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we weren't making him wait to the end if he was
No.
going to be joining. Okay, cool. Then we will move on. Committee reports. Let's start with education. Marlo, what you got for us?
Okay, it looks like we have some updates on the technology 3-year roadmap, the new ELA curriculum, and then strategic plan infographic that I see in front of people, also in the board book.
Correct.
So should I hand it over to Don?
Perfect.
Thank you. Good evening. Last year, well, I think the past few years, we've done updates on kind of our roadmap. This is an update from last year's plan and kind of tell you progress and any new things that have been added over the past year. So some of the topics we're going to cover is our kind of our environment here, some of the changes that have happened as we move away from having equipment on premise, moving it out to the cloud, talk about connectivity, our network hardware, devices, safety and security, and our web presence and social media. First thing we're going to talk about is kind of our server environment. Essentially, there's, in terms of equipment and computing equipment, you now with the expansion of the cloud, there's more things out in the cloud. We have had premise-based equipment, and then the local services typically are just the services that run on a device. So with our premise hardware, we've actually been in the process of moving things either off completely because we've switched services. For instance, our phone service. Our phone service was an application that ran on a local server. We went to Zoom. Now it just fully runs in the cloud without any local computing or even cloud computing on our part that we own. It is a software as a service now. Some of the things that remain, we are actually in the process right now of having them moved off-site or to the cloud. So we have currently on-site our Microsoft Active Directory services, which will be moved over to Azure completely by September 1. We've already moved some network services related to networking, DHCP and DNS. Those are completely off of our server environment, so no longer dependent on the Windows servers, as is our phone system, our hosted voice over IP system. The other systems that we're moving outside of our Active Directory is access control. That is our key fob system, which currently runs on a virtual server locally. That will be off into Microsoft's cloud, as well as our facilities HVAC controller access system. That will also move off of our local server into the Microsoft Azure cloud environment. Our security cameras, I think I spoke right before the end of the school year. We talked about moving to a new security camera system. We currently have little standalone DVR systems that are essentially almost looks like a VHS, looks like an old a video recorder. Those are all independent. What we'll move to is kind of a hybrid environment where we'll have some storage on site to hold some of the video, but all of the main really controlling of the system and the cameras will be via the cloud. So it'll be a cloud access to it. So what this really means is that we'll have, by September 1, we'll really have no servers on premise. We'll have no actual physical servers. Everything that we do have, any that we still manage, will be in Microsoft's cloud. Connectivity. We've had, since 2015, we first implemented an actual fiber wide area network. Comcast was awarded that bid. Since then, really in the last couple of years, the state, via Illinois Century Network, which is a state-funded program, they have been expanding their outreach and coverage of what they can provide to local school districts. Initially, the ICN with their network, what they were building out was to reach districts that couldn't afford connectivity because connectivity was so expensive. Now, as those districts have really all been hit, what they're now offering is they're offering service to other school districts. So one of the big advantages of this is that for us, what it means is we go from paying Comcast a monthly fee, which is substantial, to essentially paying nothing. We will go to $0 for our internet and WAN. What happens is that the currently part of our internet and WAN service is actually subsidized by the Fed via the E-rate program. So what happens is ICN, Illinois Century Network, takes over our service. They actually apply for that reimbursement because now they essentially become like our ISP, our carrier, and then the state reimburses them for the balance of the cost associated with it. Now with this, whether unfortunately or not, but it was really between, they bid out their circuits annually. So we had Comcast on premise. If Comcast would have been awarded that, then it would have been a very smooth transition because we already have, it's already built out. AT&T was the one that actually won the ICN bid. So we're currently, they're running new fiber into our facilities. And that's what's, so that construction component is still underway.
So, Don, the fiber that's being run to us is actually, in the future, going to be ICN fiber, but it is currently being installed by AT&T.
It's AT&T's fiber. It's AT&T's fiber, okay. It's just ICN now essentially kind of becomes our carrier, but it is AT&T's fiber.
So they're just the carrier,
Yeah.
not the owner of the infrastructure.
Exactly, yeah. So it's all AT&T. Now, one of the benefits of it, though, is that we will have both Comcast and AT&T fiber completely installed. So as we look to, while we'll go to a zero cost for our current connectivity, what we'll look to do is add redundancy in the event that one goes down. We now have failover in place and that would be a fiber failover. So we'll look at we'll start to look at, well, what are the actual costs? And before doing anything, we'll bring that as a recommendation. But it would allow for, in those instances where we have had perhaps a Comcast outage and things are down, this would allow to have that redundancy in place where everything is then very seamless, transitions over. Any questions on this thus far?
Back to where you were talking about moving things to the cloud, and I know that I haven't been in that business for a while, but when I was installing things like that or working on those types of projects, all the cloud providers would talk so much about the redundancy and failover and zero downtime, and yet I can count the number of times there have been outages both with Microsoft and Amazon, at least on one hand, over the past few years. I don't know if the current sales pitch, if they talk about the issues that have been encountered in the past have been solved, or if there are different tiers of service, and you know, where we're falling in that. But I guess my question is, are the providers that we're moving to on the cloud providing that additional redundancy? Are they acknowledging the errors they've had in the past and they're saying they fixed the problem?
Well, I think over recent years, and I think, Dan, we looked at this a number of years ago.
Yeah.
You know, really before the servers, when we put the servers in, our current servers, which were put in, I believe, in 2015, we looked at it then, because at that point, cloud was really, but it was really more cutting edge at that time. Now their uptimes are very high. They're in that 99.99, but there also is, we will have one primary location that is from a distance standpoint, but I believe it's in Illinois, but southern Illinois. But then there's, I think our failover will be in Dallas. So we will have that redundancy and cutover. So if one of their locations went down, we would cut over. The other nice thing is that the systems are really not, while they're, you know, all our systems are critical. If we were to lose connection with, for instance, our access control system, it doesn't impact local service, because all of that programming is done on the server side, and then the information replicates to the controller so that when you use your key fob, you can get in and out. If that connection goes down, the only thing that you don't have access to are ads, changes, so forth. So those systems are, it's not like a phone system where we lose dial tone.
So you always have the ability to manually do what you need to do on site, even though it ends up being a manual thing. Sorry, when I say
Well,
manual, you can open the doors.
Oh, yes, you can, yeah, we would
You
not
can
lose that
control
access.
the HVAC.
Exactly.
That's what I'm
Right,
getting
it's
at.
just having that. So for instance, like with Bill's systems, he does a lot of web interface type stuff. We wouldn't lose that type stuff. You could still do some manual stuff.
Okay.
But I think where the bigger impact is that when they are down, they're typically, you know, not down for days. You know, if you're down for an hour, those systems are less impacted by an hour's worth of downtime. I mean, there have been times where we've lost connectivity with within our environment, where we didn't even realize the current server that's here was down until somebody actually went to use it, because we have moved like DHCP, whereas DHCP is the service that assigns IP addresses to every network device. So if you don't get an IP address, you can't get on the network. Well, if that's down, you know about it right away, because people can't connect to the network. But since we moved that, I mean, the server was not like down in the sense, it just had lost connectivity to the network. It was down for a couple of days, and we didn't know it until we went to make a change on the fob server. We restarted it, it reconnected, refired up, and it was fine. So again, those systems, now that especially the phone system is off it, there's really nothing that's essentially like mission critical on anything on the local servers.
And I guess going back to the tiers of service that we have, and I'm not sure how they're selling it or packaging it, but I would imagine at least some parts of our infrastructure are on a type of service where data is encrypted, or there's some kind of
Yes.
guard against anyone accessing
Yes,
personal information.
We would have what's called a virtual private network tunnel. So we basically establish, it's our own connection directly, you know, there's two endpoints to it. So we'll actually have a firewall in Microsoft's environment that we will manage. That'll be our firewall. So you have that end-to-end encryption of anything passing through to there. So that's actually one of the advantages too, is especially as security becomes more and more critical, it gets more difficult to have the expertise to manage it locally. So you're turning over, you know, your security to those that are really at the bleeding edge of making sure things are secure.
As we do this, do you think there's a significant cost difference to having it outside based versus having to have the knowledge here plus the equipment, or is it kind of break even?
It's, I think ultimately there'll be savings in the sense that even though we're putting these things out in the cloud now, I'd be willing to bet in 3 years, none of those services will be running off of a server. They will be a pure cloud service, as opposed to an application that's running on a virtual server in Microsoft's environment. It will be like our phone system, whereas we had, our phone system ran on a local server, and then when we went to Zoom, now Zoom actually, it's just a service that they run. And so we're not managing any software updates, any virtual servers. It is just a service, just like, you know, any other, you know, cloud application you might use, like Google or Microsoft 365. Zoom, as for our meetings, it's just a cloud service. So I see all of our services really going that way. So in a few years, we'd have no Microsoft virtual servers on-premise or in the cloud.
It's sort of my understanding, based on some work I've done on VARs, that there was sort of this push from a lot of corporate clients to go into the cloud. And now there's a bit more of a retreat, right? They realize the cost savings weren't as great as they thought they might be, that they actually do prefer to have some stuff on premise. By us going completely to the cloud, does it put us in a situation where we become over-reliant on the cloud, or that we maybe don't have as great of control of our costs long-term?
I think, you know, I think anytime you go into a subscription model, depending on, you know, how those costs, the costs of those subscriptions may escalate. Our most critical systems, which are really from an information standpoint, our student information system, which we have hosted on PowerSchool, and now our finance system, which is also hosted, have never, well, since I've been here, have never been on premise, okay? And that's really, when I think when companies are talking about pulling their data in, I think it's a lot of that critical data. So I think for this environment, I think cloud makes more sense, because you're not having that, you know, you have that server replacement, and the hosting fees are nominal when compared to, well, if we had to run the service locally on local hardware, because we do have so many dwindling services that would run locally. Then you're sustaining that local environment for just a couple of applications. And I don't foresee really pulling that data in locally. So I think in our environment, this model works. And with the key services that, for instance, like with phones, they're highly competitive. So from a cost standpoint, like we have a 3-year contract with Zoom. I know in 3 years, or two in a few months, when it comes time to renew that service, it's going to be highly competitive for other providers to try to get our business. It's a really competitive. So right now with some of those systems, there's a high level of competition. We don't pay for Google. We don't pay for 365. And the other applications are really mostly curricular related, and those you can't have on premise. They're just all in the cloud. So. Oh.
With, and keep going through your slides.
Yeah. Give it a second.
I'm
not sure what. Go ahead, John.
No, I'm just curious, and I don't want to spend too much of our time here, but the state essentially picking up the cost of our internet service, that's kind of an unpublicized benefit we're getting. I mean, ICN was always meant to serve, it was originally set up to serve more rural areas. I mean, there's a fiber that runs down I-57. They were trying to really make sure that the whole state was connected. So is this just kind of and this, like I said, don't want to waste too much of our time with this. Is this the state starting to pick up more responsibility for educational costs, or, like I said, it's an unpublicized benefit that's a nice surprise, but
Well, and it's been, they've been doing it now, I think this is the third year where they've really expanded it. A lot of school districts were hesitant to switch over because they're also worried about quality of service. So I think there has been a level of hesitancy of taking advantage of it. And then also the fear of, well, what if it goes away? Well, if it goes away, we're just back to where, we're back to paying for it the way we were.
we're back to Comcast.
Exactly. So it's really, and especially since we'll have both, really, the two main fiber carriers, we'll have that infrastructure already in place. And until we actually move over to it, again, feedback has been good in terms of uptime and so, but if for some reason, if the service is not what we expected, then we can always move back. But let's take advantage of it and see what
No, I'm
happens.
not
Yeah.
questioning the
Oh,
move,
yeah.
it's just, like I said, it's a
I
it's
just
a
wonder
nice
how
benefit,
sustainable,
yeah.
how sustainable is it for the state?
They've invested a lot in that
Yeah.
system.
So as, moving on just to our premise network hardware, so this is our switches, our wireless access points. We did some minor expansion over the summer, just added a couple of switches because we were, from a distance standpoint, some of the hardware at the, over at Hauser, it went past the distance that really can run cable. So we put in a couple of switches so we can have less connectivity issues in that area. In terms of our firewall, we actually upgraded that recently, and that turned out to be a really, what was anticipating like probably a $15,000 piece of hardware upgrade. It actually turned out to be a zero cost upgrade because we did have a part on our existing firewall, a power supply, one of the redundant power supplies went down. They couldn't replace the part, so they replaced the entire appliance with a brand new one. So, so we have that. So we have that. That's already in place. That was replaced this summer. Again, we did some minor switch expansion, but between our firewall, switches, and wireless network, everything is, in current with no end of life on the horizon thus far. And I don't see the need as the standards change on the wireless and the speeds increase. I think the current speeds suit us fine. There's no need to push to expanded use at this point in time. Yeah, there we are. Devices and classroom tech. I actually think it's with the projector. We were having issues with the projector, setting it up. So our existing replacement cycles, we're just staying on those replacement cycles, 5 years for our staff MacBooks, and then our Chromebooks are on a 5-year cycle on grades 3 through 5, and then at the junior high, that's on a 3-year cycle.
Don, on the student cycles, how, is this just a usage thing that the 6 through 8 needs a quicker turnaround? Or is it just that the
Well,
kids have those?
They have them constantly, whereas at the elementaries, while they can take them home, it's not like you have to take them home every day. So that's that wear and tear, that daily wear and tear. Yeah, it's. But what we end up doing is, not that we don't have breakage or things at the elementary level, but with the 3-year cycle at the junior high, our outgoing 8th graders, well, their devices, they then can use as spares. So we have this constant influx of spares to use.
You've talked about
yeah.
that in the past, that you really have a good
Yeah, it's a ni- yeah, it's a nice
pipeline
little-
of
Yeah.
material.
It gets us through that breakage without having to buy, additional devices every year at the elementary. And then the iPads, very little breakage on iPads, but a 5-year replacement cycle. And that's typically Apple. That's what they update their operating systems, and every 5 years, they pretty much become obsolete.
So do the students take the Chromebooks to Hauser? Or do they get new ones? Just the 5 years, so a third grader would be to 7th grade.
They don't, the devices at the elementary don't follow the student.
Okay, so once you're in 5th grade, you get a new device when you go to 6th grade.
6th grade, you get
Yeah,
a brand new
okay, and then
device,
we-
and you have that same device for 3 years.
Yeah, okay. So then the 5th graders would then recycle their devices, so to speak, to the 3rd graders.
The Chromebooks and the devices at the elementary are more of a classroom resource. And we make sure
okay.
that there's one for every student, and they assign the device to the student for the year.
Okay. So that student doesn't take it from 3rd to 4th to 5th.
Exactly,
It's the
yeah.
teacher, the classroom
It's
teacher's
a-
device.
yes,
Okay.
exactly. So then anything, and if we keep spares in all the offices. If something happens with a student device, they just go down the office, they get
Yeah.
a spare.
Yep, okay.
And they're back up and
So
running.
that 3rd grade class will have the same, assuming nothing breaks, will have the same set of devices for 5 years, and then we will cycle
Exact-
those out and, okay, all right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, following them throughout elementary and managing all the classroom shifts, it's just easier to have it as
Yep.
a classroom device.
But they keep them 6, 7, 8. You get one at 6, they keep it
Yes.
to 7 and 8, and, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I have a silly question, mostly just curious as a parent. I have a small collection of Chromebook cases. So I'm just curious, like, they're not required, why don't we require students to return them? Is there a cost to us to get those, or are people
No,
just
well,
giving
the-
us the,
Well, during COVID,
The case
we gave the
covers?
cases, and those, we didn't necessarily want them back, because we just
Okay.
weren't sure, and they were, it just didn't seem like,
The-
I mean, at the junior high, they have their case throughout the entire
Registers,
time.
okay.
And if something happens, we have replacement cases for it. But we're kind of playing it safe with the cases that were issued during COVID.
Okay.
So what we did this past year is we started fresh with cases, but we, at the elementary, said, okay, take these home, and we're going to use them next year. So we
Okay.
want them to bring them back for this.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, so
I just-
we'll want to use them for this year. But now, if something happened to them, we do have spare cases, yeah.
Yeah,
But
just-
yeah, the idea is they'll have those throughout their elementary school career. So kindergartners, we already have cases ready for the incoming kindergarten that they can then use for their iPads.
for their iPads?
The next big replacement coming up would be for their classroom projectors, document cameras, and then they have the control boxes. If we went with the same type of solution, the Epson solution, I'm projecting maybe fiscal year 26, school year 25, 26, fiscal year 26. That equipment has actually held up for us really well. The last replacements we did, they were interactive projectors, which those didn't really, kind of work as originally billed when the district went with them. These could last longer, as with other devices like printers and copiers. With the pandemic, there was a lot of stuff that didn't get used. So the usage was down, they could last longer. We do preventative maintenance every single summer. We replace filters on projectors, that extends the life of the batteries. The battery replacements on these are very inexpensive when it comes to projectors. Document cameras rarely fail. So, it is equipment that if it isn't if it's functional, if it's still, producing quality, or as long as there isn't, potentially if there's some, new technology that comes on the horizon that would force a level of change. But what you could also be looking at is, at the point in time where these are due for replacement, then is it less expensive to move to flat panels by that time? to do a large screen as opposed to a projection system. That's still to be determined.
Well, you were mentioning new technology, and I couldn't help but wonder, because, yeah, some of the stuff we have is getting long in the tooth in terms of technology, but maybe there's just not anything that's come down the pike that's been a suitable replacement. I kind of remember the interactive ones as well, and wasn't sure how those had worked out. In particular, I guess the document cameras, that almost seems kind of arcane to me, but maybe that's still, that's the way things are
I would
going.
argue that, I mean, you need the camera. I mean, you need the projector document camera, but I think every single staff member, that's the most critical piece of technology for them. They use that constantly.
The
Yeah.
document camera?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just so that they can put something down and have it projected up on the screen. Am I
Yeah.
thinking about the right thing? Yep.
Yeah.
Like
It's, you
reading
know,
books in the classroom, you put
It's-
the book down, like if you go for, to be parent reader.
I mean, in some ways it replaced, the overhead. But, the overhead was just really a shadow. It's a transparency and a shadow, whereas this also gives you, like, you can hold something up three-dimensional, so it actually gives you that. And it can also be used as a camera. I mean, you can also have it, it does have multiple use in the classroom. You can take a picture with it, you can, shoot video with it as well.
When you say flat panels, are you talking about like those interactive whiteboards? Or is that something different?
Essentially big TVs now.
Yeah.
I mean.
Have those gotten a lot better? I know
Yeah.
they were like insane expensive a few years ago.
Just like they're coming down.
Yeah.
And now that technology,
It's advancing.
in the next few years, it's even, just think of around Super Bowl time, the cost of these things,
Yeah.
when they started running them on sale. It's just incredible how inexpensive. Now, granted, those can also be, not ones that you're wanting to put in a classroom for durability or so forth, or they're not touchscreens. But in general, that technology is coming down. But I think the caveat with it, and we did purchase a couple of last year to put in classrooms, just to have some teachers use them, because we got some good value on some interactives. But one of the big challenges is it takes up, if you have it at the front of the classroom, it takes up whiteboard space, which is also very valuable to teachers. So right now, the ones we have are on a stand. Yeah. We'll see. Safety and security. We have our same content filtering solution for when students are off-premise. We have on-premise content filtering. We did change monitoring services we have monitors that look for self-harm, what students are searching, looks at files that, things that they might be put in a Google document. And then we get alerts if there's any level of concern or inappropriateness to that. We did change services on that. Our internet safety curriculum, that is still using Common Sense Media for that. And teachers have access to all that curriculum. The content filtering is actually required by the federal government in order to get E-rate fund reimbursement. Multi-factor authentication, all of our new accounts, now staff are required to use multi-factor authentication, and we're still transitioning our existing staff. That's it's a little bit of a challenge, so we do it gradually, piecemeal. But actually, by the time we move off of our on-premise environment, it really forces up that everybody's going to need to be on multi-factor once we're fully off-premise for those that are not now. Financial system, student information system, email, Google, over the next really year and a half, those services are not requiring it more. So it really just becomes part of doing business. Know Before is our phishing software, which you may have noticed, you might have received some stuff as of late. We're doing internal tests currently to staff that we establish a baseline of where we are from a safety level. And then we can also identify if there's individuals that are more apt to click, and then provide some resources on that. But as of right now, we're actually well under industry norms for clicking on phishing emails. So happy
Yeah,
about
I'm glad
that.
you're doing that. I've been curious, not enough to actually ask, but I've been curious if we do stuff like that. I just got one on Tuesday,
Yeah.
let's say Wednesday, yesterday from my company actually, and
Okay.
it was like a FedEx thing, and I was expecting a package. I'm like, this just doesn't feel right, and I reported it, and they're like, thanks. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Glad we're doing that.
And it gives us those stats, which actually insurance companies, that's our cybersecurity. They want those things in place, and it helps for that too. Security on the camera side of things, the easy part of this project is the cameras itself. The challenge is the cabling. Okay, we really couldn't do any cabling over the summer, and it is something that is being bid on to be done over the course of the fall, winter, and into spring. My goal is to have all the cabling done by the end of spring break. So, because they'll be able to do some second shift work, but the bulk of the work will get done during breaks when they can have access to the buildings and run the cable. Now, we're running cable not only for cameras, but also in the event that we do expand wireless to the full perimeter externally. If we do that, we actually have received we've received approval via E-rate to get the hardware for that at a discount. The question is, do we really want to invest in that for the full perimeter outdoor access? If that is something that we decide to, well, we're still evaluating it, it would need to come to the board, and you'd get the full details on that. It's nothing that we're set to do, but if you're pulling cable, the cost is in the labor, not in the additional piece of cable, so we just pull the cable for that as well. So we're covered in the event we do it. And then the camera system would then go in after, before the end of the school year.
Just on that comment, Don, if you're gonna make a recommendation to spend more money on like outdoor access, I mean, you're probably already thinking about this, but just like a clear reason as to why it would be worth, X dollars. So what would you do with it? What does that look like?
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that, yeah, because it's not inexpensive to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm in favor of the idea, but what is that number versus the value for it? So.
And it could be, I mean, granted, while we are technically approved for like full perimeter coverage for wireless outside, if we only wanted to do certain sections, you don't have to do everything.
Okay.
You don't have to do the full RFP. You're approved up to and including whatever maximum we put in.
Okay.
For a number of access points.
And you would just put like a relay or something in that spot, and it would cover a certain distance or something like that? Or?
Essentially, it's just like an indoor, except it's mounted outside.
Yep.
And they have.
And it has a certain radius?
Yeah, there's either directional or more of a radius.
Okay.
If you know you need a specific area, you can actually have an antenna that's just pointing to a specific area.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
I could see where the discussion around camera placement would be important to a lot of people in the community. So it would be, I think, useful for the board to have information on the proposed plan
Sure.
around where the cameras will be placed.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have that
The
available.
board had some preliminary conversation about that prior to your being on the board, I think. So something we will bring back. They don't go inside classrooms. They go in some hallways and then exterior primarily. One
Yeah.
area we had talked about.
We
was the
were
gymnasium.
looking for perimeters and doors on the exterior. For the interior, it's really kind of line of sight down hallways, entrances on those doors, kind of both sides, as somebody is coming in, but also when they've come in. But the big thing is, in your larger areas, just make sure you have just coverage, line of sight, down hallways and such.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I was thinking you and Marla were already on, but that must have been like April, maybe? I mean, it was
It
like
was-
right around that time.
yeah, it
You
was
kind of given
right
us an
before.
overview.
Yeah,
And,
it actually, I think it was right before. the
yeah, it
transition,
was
yeah.
very close to
Yeah.
that May reorg meeting, but we're gonna have a lot more conversation in closed and get really detailed about some of this security stuff and have different stakeholders and things like that, so.
Yeah.
More to come on that for sure.
Finally, the web and social media presence. We did, we're following the WCAG, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0, seeking a compliance level of AA, which is, again, recommended for our type of environment. So we've been working on that, and by September 1, we're pretty much like 99.9% there, just double checking things to make sure that we're at that compliance level with some of the reviews we've been doing this summer. And then in terms of web accessibility and just some cleanup, just really to maybe increase the visibility and transparency, just some of the strategic plan section of the website. There's a lot of content there. We're in the process of evaluating it to, can we streamline it, make sure that if people are looking for information, that they find it more readily and they're finding the information they want. Some general cleanup and restructuring, identifying any misspellings, dead links, and then looking at redesigning the actual page structure layout to incorporate maybe some social media feeds directly on the page as opposed to a link to social media. And then improving our menu navigation. We have, if you've ever gone to the Parents tab, there's 20 plus items on the tab. So we want to kind of clean that up so it's a little bit easier to improve navigation. In terms of improving content, have actually started, came up with a submission form for staff that we'll be rolling out this fall when school starts. And it'll provide essentially a form where they can submit things that are going on in their classroom. So ask for a headline, some subtext, a little blurb, picture, and then we can actually further promote it on the different websites, just to help generate content. And then we did the web content updates, increasing differentiation of our sites through, whether it's through images, a lot of them on our schools pages, on our district pages, we're using a lot of the same main images when you reach. So we're going to want to just try to differentiate a little from site to site. Also looking to be consistent on our social media tools. Some schools use Facebook, some don't, some use Insta, some don't. So come to agreement on which ones are we going to use across the district. And then also have our content be more theme-oriented, which just helps us to gather content. So do themes, a theme for every month. And I believe that's it. Any questions?
Anything on that last part about just mobile friendly, like just ensuring that everything on the website is mobile friendly?
The provider we use, Edleo, it's designed to be mobile friendly.
Yeah, okay.
It is. I think sometimes the links that people may send, someone off to are not necessarily, if it's on Edleo, it should be mobile friendly.
Okay.
I know a lot of staff, they built their classroom sites in Google Sites if they have a classroom site.
Okay.
Those are not going, so we've given them the flexibility of using Edleo or Google Sites. Google Sites, they can be a little bit more creative, but that can be the trade-off.
Okay.
It's not always mobile friendly.
I tend to use my computer more just because I find it a little bit more difficult to navigate what I want to use it for on my phone. But I think my biggest issue is the embedded boxes, and your phone kind of cuts it off, and then you can't get to the things to move it around and stuff. So anything a lot like Board Book, when you pull something up and it's like a document inside of a box, I think that's where I personally
That's it,
mostly
that's the
struggle
issues.
with it. Yeah.
Okay. And we will be, we have, and Martha and I have talked about this, is Edleo is our current provider. That's also a highly competitive industry. There are many service providers out there. So it's something that the step one was really, let's clean up our content. Whether you change providers, if you don't have good content, then you're on a new site and still don't have good content. So let's get the content. If we move to something else, that's always out there.
So should I think of Edlio as just the framework to provide our content or something? Or do they actually design the whole thing? We tell them what to do and they do
host our web pages.
Yeah.
And so when we actually signed up with them, what they do is they do custom layouts for every school district.
Okay.
So the one we selected, we're the only school district that has that layout.
Okay.
But it came from a gallery of the ones they had available, which that's always an option too, to just evaluate a different layout. So it's, but we'll also look at other service providers.
Okay.
But Elio is the host.
Yeah. So I'm thinking when we went through all the strategic plan stuff, we probably had the most updates there during that period of time. And so we had the framework of that space built, and then you or somebody went in and plugged in the content. Okay.
Yeah. Which it does, the benefit of that is you do have that consistency.
Yeah.
So you go from page to page to page to
Yeah.
page. It's the
Same
same
look and
menu
feel.
structure. It doesn't get, too crazy.
Yep. All right.
How long have we been with Edlio? Is it like 6?
I want to say it was maybe 2018, 2019.
I remember switching.
Yeah. Yeah, before that we were on WordPress, just like a WordPress, GoDaddy host.
Okay.
Yeah. Very, very limited in what we could do with it. One of the benefits of that type of service is you can have multiple people posting content. So it's not just, you don't have a webmaster. The principals are really the publishers of the content, the bulk of the content on their website, and it gives them that flexibility to make changes as they need to. A lot of it links back to district stuff, but it does give them that flexibility.
I do just a comment, I do like the addition of some of the classroom stuff. And I think it kind of, Martha, when I was reading through this before today, I was thinking about all the feedback we've had about telling our story and stuff like that. And I think that's a great way to localize that ability of something cool. I'm thinking A to the cow, right? You got the posts up there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I like that. I think that'll be good.
Yeah, we're hoping that you'll, the community will see, parents will see that there's just a lot more of that kind of teacher-driven content, what's going on in the classrooms.
Yeah.
That isn't just limited to maybe a newsletter that is being sent home. It gets more exposure. All set?
We'll
Cool.
shift gears to Angela with the ELA consultant.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. I'm here to talk about our ELA curricular review for this upcoming school year. So as you know, a couple of years ago we went through, wow, it doesn't seem like 2 years ago. 2 years ago we went through the math curricular review process, and last year we started the science curricular review process. This year we're going to approach the English language arts curricular review process. English language arts is a larger process because it encompasses reading instruction, writing instruction, grammar instruction, all the pieces of the English language arts curriculum. For this review process, a team will be formed that will represent all grade levels, all buildings, will include special education representative, an English language learner representative, and our reading specialists. We will, as a team, review best practices with literacy instruction. The Illinois State Board of Education has developed a literacy plan for the state of Illinois, so we'll be sure to review that plan as well as we're looking at our current resources, as well as potentially looking at new resources. So we start by looking at our current curricular resources to see if they're meeting our needs. And if they are meeting our current needs, if we're seeing student achievement and growth the way we would like to see it for English language arts, and we're seeing that in both our reading scores but also our writing scores, then there's not a need necessarily for a new curricular resource. If we're not seeing the resources meeting our needs and we have the reasoning behind why it's not meeting those needs, then we'll look at other resources that we will potentially explore piloting. So the meetings that we have will be to explore our current resources. If it's determined that we need to examine other resources, we'll use those meetings then to examine the other resources, possibly have some vendor presentations. And then when looking at those potential other resources, we will determine 1, 2 at the most resources that we might pilot. So then we would look at a pilot during probably January and February and into March. And our goal would be to have a recommendation for the board in April. What I am asking for your favorable consideration on is a partnership with CEC. Partnering with the Catalyst for Educational Change, CEC, provides a facilitation partner for this process. As I said, it is a larger process than math was because there's more components to it. Partnering with someone from CEC, and particularly the consultant that we would be working with, brings a wealth of knowledge and resources from this person, as she's a former assistant superintendent for curriculum and instruction, so she has that background. But then just as a consultant for CEC, she's also worked with many other districts and knows what has worked for other districts and where they've seen pitfalls and struggles, and so she brings that knowledge to the table as well. An added bonus is the person we would be working with is the person we're already working with CEC for our Empowered Teams collaborative structures work that we're doing this year. So we'd have the same person who now is working with our district in 2 different areas, and we can keep that consistency in our values, our beliefs, and our goals happening between the 2 pieces of work. So, and then a co-facilitation will also help ensure that we stay on course and that we're not getting sidetracked by the day-to-day happenings in our district. When I lead a curricular review process, sometimes things get postponed or delayed because of other things that come up within the district for my role. So having a co-facilitator just keeps us on track for our goal of making a decision by April. So as I said, I'm looking to see or asking for your favorable consideration regarding a CEC contract, regarding the CEC contract that will be at this month's regular board meeting. Are there any questions about the curricular review process?
I was going to ask about CEC because definitely, I know I'd heard that name before, although there's something else before that?
Yeah, they helped us develop our strategic plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was thinking, but weren't they?
They changed from the Consortium for Educational Change to the Catalyst for Educational Change.
I did have
but
to
they're the
Google
same
it to make sure it was the
organization.
same. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but they did go through a name change.
So we're not definitively looking for a new curriculum,
Not
which was what I was
definitively.
under the
We start with any curricular review process, we start with is what we have working.
Mm-hmm.
So our junior high math team, for example, we are going to meet, Mr. Harvalis and I are going to meet with our math department to just talk about is Carnegie working for us, what's working, what do we think needs to be changed or added, and if we see a reason for a review process for them, then I would come to the table again. That's how we start with all of them. We started that way with science, we started that way with math, and we'll start that way with English language arts too.
Okay.
A review cycle does not always mean new curriculum.
Okay.
Now, remind or correct me, but no matter what, every curriculum iteration kind of has a timeline, and we need to then re-up that. We will be, no matter what, we're re-upping a curriculum.
Correct.
It's really deciding if we're sticking with current but there's always that cost of re-upping.
Could be. Some resources don't change
Too much.
significantly enough in a 5-year period that you'd have to get a new resource. For math, we did talk about whether we adopted iReady or we stuck with Math in Focus, we would have to re-up because
That's what I
they
was
had
remembering.
so many changes from the previous edition that previous edition was obsolete. But that doesn't happen every time.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a possibility or a way to expedite this schedule at all? I just, given what what was presented at the last board meeting, it just seems like it should be such an area of focus for us, and to not have a recommendation until March, it feels like it's such valuable time, and so I understand that this process takes time, but I just wonder if, you know, if there's any way to sort of expedite this so we understand if we, you know, need to move in a different way sooner.
So when I presented to Margot that I wanted to be able to make a recommendation by April, her jaw dropped because it's already expedited by trying to make a decision by April. Yes, if we met, right now the schedule's about a meeting every 3 weeks. If we met every other week, had more frequent meetings, we could make a decision faster, but even piloting a good pilot will take 6 to 8 weeks. So you're still looking at a 2-month pilot. Even if we were to, we wouldn't have a decision before winter break. And then it's ordering materials and providing professional learning. So regardless of when we when we were able to make that recommendation to the board, we still wouldn't implement until next school year.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
So what exactly is CEC going to help you with before the pilot?
Absolutely. So Margot would help with facilitating our meetings, pulling the resources, talking to the vendors that were coming to do presentations. She brings in knowledge of what programs are working. I have a list of probably 7 or 8 programs from different districts of people that I work with and I've talked to through my cohorts and so
Okay.
forth. But
Like programs different than ours, or
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yep. So that if we're looking at a resource other than Advance, Benchmark Advance for primary and Ready Gen, if we're looking for a different resource, I have a list of a whole bunch of different ELA resources that other districts are using.
Okay.
But she comes in with background knowledge on what's really worked with these and where there's been struggles with these. Instead of just a salesperson coming to me and telling me all the wonderful things from their program, she has background knowledge on just the true iterations of it from her work with other districts as well.
Okay. All right. I may have missed that part. I heard we're going to evaluate our students to see what needs we have, and then we're going to pick a pilot. But there's a lot that happens between those two things. So you're doing a bunch of evaluation of other
Yes.
programs. So now I'm kicking in when you were talking about some of the other curriculum stuff, we've whittled it down.
Right.
So you had this whole menu of stuff that you've got to assess, pick 2 or 3 to pilot, and okay.
Yes.
And so
And we use a rubric, and we talk about the different best practices with reading comprehension, with phonics.
and is
with
that a rubric you would
vocabulary.
make? Like,
No,
the-
and see, that's where
that's
she's helpful. It's
Okay.
stuff that it's rubrics and pieces of information that she has from her role as a consultant as well as from her past.
okay. And then that work, September, October, November, December, will get us, which actually, because I agree with you, Selena, but now that I'm actually thinking about it, that is kind of quick. And then you have to pilot, because you got to be thoughtful about what you want to pilot,
Correct.
because we don't want to do it over,
Right.
because that
And-
just delays more.
Yes.
So, okay.
And remember, sometimes pilots cost money. For our math pilot, we didn't have to pay anything for those resources we had, but for SEL pilot, we did have to pay money. So that's the other piece. You don't want to just, we're going to pilot anything and everything, because we're not going to pay for anything and everything. We
Yeah.
want to truly be deliberate in what program or two programs
Yeah.
we decide to pilot.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And I was just thinking, because I don't know if this is where Selena was going, but this is where my head went when she asked the question, is like, if you need money to make it move faster, fine. But it's really the time, it's
the
just time.
to do it
Yeah.
right. Yes.
For
Okay.
teachers to really study to this, you know, are the standards really embedded into these curriculum? It's everything you just said, you know, are these standards really there? Does it really represent all these instructional practices?
Is it rigorous?
And then this idea that teachers really don't change curriculum resources midstream. Like, you know, I mean, it would be very rare that a teacher would pick up a new curriculum resource in January of a
Mhm.
school year, let's say. So they're often paced and guided to take a school year. So
Yeah.
teachers really will do that training, spring, summer,
Mhm.
No
early
matter
fall,
what,
yeah.
you're implementing at the beginning of the school year when you've got
Yeah.
new kids in your new classroom.
It's hard to envision a shift that teachers would make. And teachers will, like I think of SEL as an example, right? That teachers will make changes. They may look at a new resource and say, you know, I'm not doing that in my classroom. There are great ideas there. So teachers, like, I think it's always important to remember that the curriculum resource that we buy, that we choose, is a very important guide. It's a very important decision. I'm not diminishing that in any way. it is not the be-all and end-all that teachers supplement. Teachers sort of, rely on previous practices, best practices, ongoing professional development. So people will change their instruction and their technique and maybe even some of the resources they use based on real learning in real time. So I think as we say, we have to beef up how we're teaching English language arts. That can happen with or without a new resource. A new resource will make it smoother, more efficient, all those good things, in the future. But it doesn't mean that we can't enhance and improve our practices in real time, in the meantime. So I think that's important. There's been so much, and Selena, I'm not sure if this is the part you're referring to, so much about particularly the early reading, the K2 emphasis on reading. Our reading specialists and our primary teachers have really been studying that and digging in on that, regardless of having a new resource.
Thank you.
I don't know why, I probably should know this, but I'm kind of blanking. Did we utilize similar partnerships when we underwent the math and science?
We didn't, so we did for math, because we
Okay.
utilized our MCMI consultant that was already working with us,
Okay,
that
that's
already
right.
works with us through coaching.
That's
So
what it was.
Joanne Baker had assisted with the math adoption then with that. We didn't for science, and that's it's that day-to-day piece of my job that then got us off track with science, and it's part of the reason, not the full reason, but part of why science carried over into this school year. And we needed some extra time to be able to make the right decision for science instruction.
How long have we utilized our current ELA curriculum?
Was
Ready?
it 6 or 7 years?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say too.
And I think
2016, 2017, I think.
And we did work with a consultant around the selection of
Yeah.
that.
As well?
Time.
Okay.
So this is something that ideally it would be placed under the consent agenda for board approval at the August 16th meeting. Obviously, if it's something to be pulled off, or if you think there's something more discussion, this is, professional supports for Angela and for the team. But we always, want to bring that information to all of you for consideration.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
The
Yeah,
other,
so Martha, on that, I guess, if anybody's feeling like they're not gonna approve it, then let's figure that out.
yeah,
Because I think you and I had talked about putting it on the next agenda, we had it in the consent agenda, but if anybody has a strong opinion to not move forward with this, I think we should probably figure that out.
and we could also just put it under old business action also.
Yeah.
If that
If
feels
we need a more
comfortable to
discussion. Yeah,
people
yeah,
for
yeah.
more conversation.
Yeah, so just to throw that out there, we don't have to figure that out today, but just as you guys think about it, just let me or Martha know, and as we're setting the agenda for the next round, we can figure out where to place it based on where people are standing at that point in time.
And I just had one other thing under Education Committee, and that is the strategic plan infographic, and all credit goes to Casimir Gorman for developing this, but this is sort of our strategic plan placemat. I said to Kathy 2.0. If you recall, we had the strategic plan, and we still have it with all of our mission, vision, values, goals, strategies. We've seen that multiple times now, but one of the things that our leadership team in meeting this summer really wanted to make sure that we have a way to visually represent for staff the interconnectedness of all of our goals and the shared work specific to the strategic plan. So we are going to share this at Institute Day. We're in the process of figuring out a engaging way for staff to spend some time just really taking another look and realizing that really all of the work that we've talked about around our professional development goals, curricular goals, student learning goals, our facilities, et cetera, finance, all really do relate to the goals in our strategic plan. Any comments about that?
Nope.
I know we don't have David here for finance, but
We do not.
Jim is ready to
Yeah.
go with the budget.
Want to come up? All right, let's move on to finance.
Hello. Time to talk about the new budget. FY '23 ended at the end of June, on 6/30. And this budget we'll talk about tonight is the one that started July 1st. It covers July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024. There's a new public act saying that we have to make sure we talk about fund balances when we do the budget and when we do the levy. So this is a little different slide than I've shown before, but they didn't exactly say which fund balance. It changes every day. So I thought it would make sense to put the certified one from the auditors, and that's the first column. And then, and you can see down there, 79%, that's where we ended, but that's FY '22, that's the last audit that we went over, I think, in January. And then I have I have the pre-audit numbers for the year that just ended, and that's the second column. The auditors will make some adjustments, but it shouldn't change by too much. And the operating fund balance will be 69%, 20,722,000, give or take.
So the downward trend we're looking at there is primarily due to the construction projects that
Yep,
we're taking place right now?
out of the operating and into capital fund. So we moved $4 million. And the last column is the budget numbers I put together here. And it's a balanced budget, but we're also moving 3.8 million into capital projects again. So that's why you see it going down again to 51%. So we're still safely above the 40% policy.
Are we still funding the transportation fund? I thought with the last audit, were we not doing that anymore, or did we move? I thought we did something with that because we were way overfunded.
Right, so, see, the fund balance was $1,048,000 and $1,025,000. Then when I levied, I asked for a lot less than that fund and moved the rest to education.
Okay.
So now it's dropped to 650, but the money's up in 10 and in education where we would spend it. We've transferred it, we collected it in transportation, then we transferred it to education to spend it.
Okay.
I'm just trying to get it through the levy process, I guess.
Okay.
So it's just that you do that about 2 years before you get it, so.
Okay. So the 650 is where we're going to stand.
It's, yeah, I mean, it's still a little bit high. It's 83%, but we're going to shoot for between, 50 and 75%
Okay.
for some of those smaller funds.
So do we just spend that down? We expect to spend that down and we'll figure out next month or next year, the next levy
Right.
based on what we end? Because it feels like 650,000 is plenty of money.
Right.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, transportation costs are going up, so it's,
Yeah.
we'll keep looking at it. When we put that together in December, the levy, we'll look at what we spent the last couple of years and come up with a number. And we can always transfer it if we have to, but it takes board action. It'd be nicer if we can budget and levy where we want it.
Yep.
Getting into this year's budget, these are the steps that are required when you're preparing a school budget. And we published the notice on July 12th. And at the meeting August 16th, we'll have our public hearing before the meeting, and then have a vote to adopt the budget later in the meeting. And then the last two things are, I have to file a budget within 30 days of the approval, the adoption. The budget is balanced, but it's 4.5% higher on the revenue side and 4.5% higher on the expenditure side. The approach is to be real specific on what we're spending on the expenditure side. So we will run payroll for the whole year. We can do that with this newer system that we have. It's just we don't have all positions filled, so you might be guessing on what you're hiring people at. But we can run the benefits and payroll, which is most of our expenditures. And then like Don's budget, he'll go line by line, I gotta get these licenses, and we have the prices. So it's not, just add 4% on that side. It's pretty detailed. You start kind of with zero base, but it's pretty much all the same teachers. You're just updating payroll for the new salaries. And then it magically balances by picking the revenues to match that expenditure. And then I do a kind of rigorous approach to the property tax, which is the biggest piece, and make sure that it's reasonable to budget what we have. And so usually there's a nice cushion there. And so when I did that detail this time, there's a good $700,000 that if it doesn't come in or, something else goes on, at this point, I would think we would add $700,000 to fund balance next year with FY24. I'm just not budgeting that, but want everyone to know there's some cushion to this. So here's the tentative budget. And the blue box there is, the budget will be $32.9 million on the revenue side and $32.9 million on the expenditure side. I've got the red box there transferring $3.8 million. We'll have to fine tune that as we approve projects and get bids. And so if you see up there, it probably needs to be about $707,000 more transferred. But when we get to the point where we're going to transfer money, we'll be looking at real numbers at that point, or much more updated numbers. So that'll be bringing down the operating balance. The operating funds is that blue line. And so those are things that occur kind of cyclically on an annual basis. And then below that, like capital projects, those are things that have a longer timeline and they fluctuate and are not quite as predictable. They're all approved though. On the expenditure side, we said the biggest piece, probably 75% of what we spend is salaries and benefits. And if you look at the blue numbers at the bottom, we've got, I don't know if you can read them, but we've got, last year we had 261.6 FTE, and the new budget has 263.85. And so we added a net of 2.25 FTE. And in the light green there, the ones we added were one full-time teacher at Blythe to teach 5th grade, and the 4 cafeteria or food service workers that are part-time down below. And then in the red, these are the positions that are going away. The assistant special ed director's position and the cafeteria manager position. So even though we added 2.25 FTE, you could probably tell from these positions that it's still a net reduction in salary cost. So this doesn't happen very often, but we added FTE and our salary costs went down.
Good job, Jim.
Maybe we should add more.
Primarily, I'm guessing because of the no longer having the assistant director of special ed.
Primarily.
Yeah.
Do our social workers sit in specialists or special education?
I'm sorry?
Like our school psychologist and...
Yeah, that would be special.
That's in the specialist
Yeah,
group?
that's how it's divided out.
And is that why that has... Why has that number increased from 20 to 24? From
Over the
72
years?
to 77? There's an increase of 5.
So we're talking about the teachers, the second grouping?
Yeah. On the
Under
specialist
specialists,
line.
it's 70.
Special education?
6 to 77 to 77.
Oh, no, I'm
We
Yeah.
had
Seeing
Megan-
support staff, I see that's going 74 to 77.
under teachers, I'm looking at specialists, and I
Okay.
see that it goes from, in 20, it was 72.36, and now it's at 77.07.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so
just
over
curious
the-
what-
So over the past 5 years, we
Yeah.
added specialists.
Okay.
We've got
Psychologists.
psychologists, but one. I'm trying to think too. Are nurses under there? No, I'm.
Don't we have
No,
a
nurses aren't
nurse
special
with, like, the
Instructional
ESSERs?
specialists, maybe?
Yeah.
This
Like
is, I
English
think this is
language or-
partially
or
COVID
Yeah, the
recovery.
ESSER, we
Oh, I
hired them.
wonder if this is our permanent subs.
Yeah, that's what,
The
we did that a
four.
few years ago.
Yeah, we added a psychologist last year, right? That was sort of part of our recommendation post-COVID, a full-time regular, but it was one. And then,
Yeah, because they wouldn't be in any of the other categories.
yeah, I wonder if it was the permanent subs.
I'll confirm that.
Yeah,
but
okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
How do we have,
Timing fits.
yeah.
Yeah, because we dropped, or we reduced parapros by a similar amount in that same time frame, from 21 to 22.
We also added the instructional coach. I'm just trying to think more from, and Jim, we'll look at it together in terms of the detail under there, but a coach might also fall under specialist, or they fall under a regular education teacher? Some of it's how they're defined and where they're placed.
Yeah, I believe they're specialists.
Okay.
In my simple way of thinking about it, the regular education ones are the ones who have a classroom to manage. And special education is separate, and the specialists are the ones that move between classes. But I'm sure someone could give you a better answer than that.
are there a few in there that are not full-time? Just, I'm
Yeah,
confused by that not being a round number.
right.
Okay,
Not a lot anymore. but
because our full-time subs would be full-time, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and like
1.0.
our psychologists, and so somebody in
They're
that
full-time.
group is just not full-time, and that's what gets us the uneven number. Am I thinking about that right?
Maybe close, maybe a .57. Does that make sense?
We
Yeah,
had
'cause
math
you're using-
intervention was the part-time person.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to look at I have to see the whole budget detail sheet before I guess at it too much.
Yeah, because you're calculating hours, full-time equivalent, as in the hours that they're working, which is why these are not whole numbers.
Right.
And I don't remember where music's teachers ended up.
Full-time, they may be under specialists.
Yeah, that's a good one, yep.
Specialists, music and art and PE. If you recall, we added a specialist teacher. We had specialist teachers when we did the full-day kindergarten in addition.
There's more descriptions behind this in the spreadsheet, but this is a PDF, but
I think-
I can get the detail.
I think the key question that I was just trying to get at was like, how many additional school psychologists and others in that realm have we actually added over the last 5 years?
I know one last year and at
Yeah.
SEL.
Actually, what I would say, just to be really clear, I was asking Nora to bring that forward to like the August 16th meeting, because it's an area that we have focused in on. It gets to be a little bit complicated because we purchase some of those services through our LADSI cooperative, and we pay for some of them directly in-house, and we've made some additions and changes. But I'd rather, especially looking at like a 5-year, I'd rather not just rely on memory, but I'd rather sort of do a more formal analysis and bring that forward. If everyone's comfortable with that. What's that, Stephanie?
I would be interested in that. You brought up a good question. I have a similar thought, like, oh, those were those COVID hires and,
Yeah.
but yeah, now I can't quite articulate
Good to flesh it out to make sure that we're,
Yeah.
which, yeah,
that
positions
we're
those
identifying
were.
and answering the questions.
Is that the only area that folks want focus on, just that specialist group? Is that where the main question lies? Because I don't know exactly where you're going with it, Selena, but I know that whole mental health thing is a big, it's top of mind for me, for sure. Coming out of COVID recovery and knowing many, many people in the mental health industry and just being prepared for challenges that we don't even know we have yet, stuff like that, so. But is there anything else any other questions that any of you would like brought if we're gonna do the work? Okay. So specialists, a focused conversation on specialists at this point.
Okay.
So if anybody comes up with anything else, let us know.
Any questions on the budget?
I guess one, where does our cash balance sit?
Well, it's slightly different than the fund balances. But essentially, at the end of last year, so June 30th, our operating balance would be 20.7 million.
Sorry, the question I asked was not correct. Are we investing that money, or is it actually just sitting in cash?
We're part of a treasurer group, the Proviso, so maybe 15 districts. The treasurer prints our checks for us, and we go pick them up and mail them out. But they're in charge of the investing.
It's required by law.
Yes.
The whole
Yeah,
TTO
it's,
thing.
It's required by law. It's not very efficient and has burned us in the past.
That's the township treasurer.
Yeah, the township
Yeah.
treasurer.
There are
Right.
districts that have looked to, actually, there's an old memo that I could pull up because this was something the board had wanted to investigate in my time here, at least once, but probably like 7 years ago. And it is legislatively required that we are part of the township treasurer's office, and that you are not allowed to withdraw.
It would take an act of the legislature.
Yes,
to
or
withdraw
the
this.
governor could grant you the opportunity or something like that. I'll pull it up for you. It's sort of interesting and frustrating and very
LT.
unique to school districts.
LT was able to withdraw, but again,
Well,
it's
still going on.
it's still going on.
Years
Yes,
and
it's
years
quite
of
a
law,
rare
4
event.
years now or something like that. So it's like,
I think it's even longer than that.
You think it's longer than that?
It's a significant legal fight, and
Yeah.
it got pretty ugly, and they're still not, like Wesley said, they're still not resolved.
no. The TTO didn't want him to leave, and it just got into this nasty thing.
Yeah, I just raise it because we have a pretty significant cash balance, and the treasuries are yielding a nice
yeah.
rate right now, and
Yeah,
the CPI is increasing to a point like we don't want to lose the value of our cash.
Yeah.
I can also send out the last report from the treasurer on how the interest, what interest we got and how they put it in our funds, so.
That'd be great.
It sounds like our hands
Yeah,
are
they
pretty
don't-
tied, but
they
Well,
give me a lot
I
of
don't know,
detail.
Jim, are there any options that we're given in terms of how our general fund is invested or any kind of risk tolerance that's allowed us, or is it essentially
I
this is
think
what it
it's-
is?
I'll find out, but I think they're really, there's not a lot they can invest in, especially anything risky.
It's probably gotta be more fixed assets than anything else, I would guess, right?
That's my guess. It's
Probably very similar to pension funds.
Of course, that
Yeah.
didn't
Right.
stop them from investing in fake bonds once upon a
Things
time
where
ago.
you need to know your money is there when you need it, and, yeah. But do we have any control over that, or they
we
just
might
tell
have a
us what
little
they did?
influence, but
No
I don't,
influence, yeah,
not.
okay. Which I think is your point, right? Like, do we have any influence over that money? And it doesn't sound like we do. They have it, and they tell us what they did with it,
Right.
and then we get it when we need it, but that's
If
it.
there was something you were interested in, I could
th-
mention
yeah.
it to them.
Can you see what information they have on, to
Yeah.
Selena's point? What is their process for investing and preserving value? And then also, Martha, that previous TTO discussion.
I found it, I can.
Yeah.
Now that we have a hedge fund manager on our team, maybe some suggestions.
I mean, I'm putting out, I'm just saying, like, the T-bill right now,
Yeah.
the 1 to 3 month T-bill is yielding, I think,
It's a
a little
very-
over 5%.
It's a very valid question. Unfortunately, it's a very frustrating answer.
Every year we get some interest. Better years it is higher, so there's a correlation to what we hear out there and what we get, but we don't get to influence too much.
All right, anything else? Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
All right, thanks.
Okay, policy committee, Miss Stephanie.
All right, I went on vacation and I came back to find these in my mailbox. Thanks.
Didn't look too bad.
It's not. This is called the summer spruce up issue. That is literally what it is referred to.
Fun.
So very pleased to present a small press issue. And we should probably think fondly upon it because we hear that when fall comes, I think there's guarantees that it will be bigger. So all of these are essentially 5-year reviews. So just kind of housekeeping. Many are very self-explanatory, very kind of inconsequential, perhaps, changes that have been suggested. I'm happy to go through a few of these. So it's just a lot of kind of comparing and contrasting our language to, you know, kind of the, if we do Press Plus to the Press one. So I don't know if, hopefully folks got a chance to do at least a preliminary read, if there were any that stood out to you. The way they're presented in board book, after reviewing them, is the way that we would recommend they be kind of adopted for update. A couple that I just did want to talk through with the board is the very first one, 280, on how we administer the oath. So right now, our policy states the board president, vice president, or the next longest serving member administers the oath. I believe that's our current process. We just went through it. But the press also says, what else? If neither is available, no, wait, never mind, sorry. They also say that another option would be just to, where is it? They could read it themselves or have a local official administer the oath. So these other options that I don't foresee us needing to look into. I think the way that we do it right now, we have essentially 3 options in front of us to administer an oath. So I felt comfortable with that and not making any changes to how we actually administer. The other one I just wanted to quickly talk through was the insufficient fund checks and debt recovery, and why the language in the future is removed. So I don't know, you all might have more knowledge on this. I learned about it by attending a webinar, but it's really just this small policy text that has an explanation. So like 10 years ago, the legislation was passed that authorized the state comptroller to help local governments collect debts, known as the Local Debt Recovery Program. So essentially, you enter into this IGA with them, okay? But it was really unclear if schools would be able to participate in this. But recently, the comptroller said that while their office has not yet entered into an IGA with any K through 12s, they are open to it if the circumstances warranted it. So they're not like essentially shutting school districts out as a kind of categorical matter here. They don't have an interest in going after like school lunch fees or anything like that. They're looking more like non-resident tuitions, for example. So just brief history and explanation as to why it said in the future. It technically could exist now should a school district want to enter into an IGA with the comptroller's office to collect debt. The other one that I, just to provide a little clarity on, was it 4100? No, 5230, which is maintaining student discipline. So the reason that they now use the language licensed in brackets and educational is essentially there's like no legal changes occurred here or anything, but they're following what's in the law, and the law is inconsistent. They were saying the school code provision uses the term certificated, but like the administrative rules that go along with that utilize the term license. So to accurately reflect that, they're just using the brackets, essentially think of them as synonyms to each other. All right, so again, just explanation as to why it says certificated and now licensed educational. Silly, but that's what they're doing. Just want to point out too, policy 610 for us, this is the new version with our new strategic plan, mission, motto. So this is the educational philosophy and objective. So it'll be updated to reflect our new version of the strategic plan.
So that was written with assistance of our attorneys, or?
The
think-
educational mission one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
No, we-
really, it's Kathy
it's
and
like
I,
a-
it's,
Oh,
that one
okay.
is, it really just says describe, and so we took the previous press policy, it just had more boilerplate language, and our language is more specific with our strategic plan.
Okay.
This felt very not lawyery. So
Yeah,
I was kind of
it
wondering what
didn't
was.
seem,
not
but
quite
if
a
you think
copy
there's
paste,
something
but
in there
then-
that we would want to have a legal review on, didn't strike me as that way, but there may be something you're keying into.
No,
that-
honestly, I
okay.
was, being a policy, I was kind of assuming that all of them would get a legal review, but if not, I'm happy to save the however much it was.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for now, we're saved on that then.
Yeah, because I'm trying to look through what, I mean, it's consistent with how our last one was written in terms of just the non-legal language. The other one, just wanted to bring up, and I don't know, Martha, you might have more updates on this. So the concussions and head injuries one, which I had not read yet. This was the first time I came across it. Just more of a heads up, they essentially, the AP, which like accompanies this, but we don't, it's not part of policy, but it's like the procedure. And again, we oversee policy, not necessarily the procedure, but it essentially added to the duties of like the building principal related to the emergency action plan for concussion. So Martha and I talked about that, just ensuring that all the right personnel,
Yeah.
like you were saying, the
Nurses
Nurses,
primarily, yeah.
Yeah,
The
we're all
nurses really
aware.
facilitate a lot of that. Yeah.
aware of this. So felt good about that. And then really just the other things that I think are on the horizon, kind of on the burner, there are some like final Title IX regulations they referenced that would be coming out in October. I think they were originally meant to come out in May. So we'll be seeing some updates based on Title IX. And then they're gonna be making some updates to the school wellness policy this fall. And last press, we talked so much about Faith's Law and, you know, the hiring practices that changed with that. So they just came out with some really helpful like FAQs and resources, which I'm sure, I think we talked about, like Donna's aware of at this point. But yeah, that was it. It was kind of, like I said, more of a spruce up, looking through your policies as written, and the minor changes presented I felt comfortable with. I don't know if anybody picked up on anything else. I'm looking at Joel, he's always our closest reader, I feel
haven't
like.
picked up anything yet.
You actually answered one of my questions on that whole debt thing. I guess my follow-up is, my question was, do we have an IGA? Because I don't remember
No,
doing
you would
that.
like
We
enter, no
don't.
school
Yeah.
has entered into one, but if you were going to with this agency, with the comptroller, you'd essentially enter into an IGA to do so.
Yeah.
So now it gives you, I guess, that option, truly that option.
Yeah. Well, we have, tentatively, we have IGA reviews for the next meeting, and this was not one that
No,
was in
no.
that. I don't remember
I
ever
don't
talking about it,
foresee
so-
us.
No, I don't.
So you
having
answered
one.
that, there are none of them. But
Was-
then, I guess, why do we have a policy that is irrelevant?
That is,
Mm.
I think the top part of that one does talk about the superintendent having, let's see, it's the insufficient fund checks. So the superintendent has the authority to collect these return check fees and all that kind of stuff. But like if the delinquent debt recovery is a page, if it's completely irrelevant, why is it even in here? And do we have a choice to remove it, or is this just because it's legislation, we have to have it in here whether we use it or not?
that's a good question. I mean, it's,
I was gonna look at the legal reference.
yeah, but it's press plus, so I mean,
think it's because the existing policy says this program may be available. It doesn't force you to use it. It just gives you the option.
Okay. So okay. So
I guess
this
it was
would
more obsolete in the past, but now it's,
maybe less obsolete, but we're
Less.
still not using it. But if we don't have the policy and we choose to engage,
you
we
couldn't
can't.
yeah,
We'd have to
that's-
first adopt a policy, then enter it into an IGA. Okay.
This leaves
But
you
then
the wiggle
theoretically,
room.
I'm guessing that might cause a problem with the debt collection in the first place if we don't have the policy in place already.
Well, I'm just thinking about this piece of it, of actually entering into an IGA with the IOC. Keeping, I didn't want to remove the entire thing, but it's just those two pieces. You can collect it, superintendent has the authority to collect it, and then the delinquency is to use this office for your debt collection instead, and it's just, I don't know, I guess that type of stuff, it's unclean, and it drives me nuts
Yeah.
that we have stuff in here that's completely irrelevant to how we run our district, but that's fine. It's not hurting anything either, so.
I guess the question I would have is, why have districts not engaged previously with,
Well, because I think previously it was very unclear if they would actually engage with districts, if the comptroller's office were going to, because that's why it said like in the future. So even though this law had passed, it really wasn't geared towards K through 12. So now we might start seeing more schools engaging with them to collect, again, specific types of large debts. They're not looking
right?
as a
And,
policy.
and they do this for other political entities.
Yes, yeah, and
That's, it
I
may
guess.
be that, like you said, it's clearer now that we get to participate as well, or, sorry,
Yeah,
educational.
So we might, again, start to see more K through 12 engage in IGAs with the comptroller's office to pursue debt recovery in this way. So I guess it's just a policy because it's one of the options that the superintendent is authorized kind of to seek collection via this as an option.
This one does say consult your board attorney if for assistance, so I'd be happy to get more background if that's something that the board's interested in.
It almost sounded like the board attorney is when you actually
Engage.
Pursue the debt.
pursue the
yeah.
debt, because you're,
Mhm.
is it good debt to pursue? Are you looking at the,
Well, in the time I've been on the board, I don't
Situation
know that
of
we've ever
the-
pursued a bad debt, so, you know, if it's, I don't know that it would need a review.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
we
I don't,
haven't,
I mean, it's
we
not
have-
a problem right now,
we
right?
haven't needed to, I
Yeah.
think is.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, didn't mean to belabor that, it's a pet peeve. The only other comment that I had, more interesting than anything else, is I don't think we've ever talked about insurance at the board table, or like, we don't approve our, the costs of that or anything like that, like some other districts do, but I just thought the policy here was pretty interesting, the way that it's written, and it doesn't say anything about auto liability. And my guess is there's nothing in your press notes that even touches on that, because it's just a review. Or I guess it's a draft update.
Is
But like,
this,
it talks about liability, which would be your general slip and falls and, you know, things if people were here and got hurt because of negligence or whatever. And the last two sentences says property insurance. Number 2 says workers' comp, but I'm not seeing anything in here about automobile insurance. And then it's employee insurance programs, which I'm assuming is, I guess, I don't even know what employee insurance benefits, be health benefits or something like that, benefits insurance, but that's a contract negotiation thing, I think, more than anything else. So I don't know. It just was, I'm in this industry, so it was just interesting how they wrote it. I assume we have auto insurance as part of our comprehensive insurance program?
Jim, do we have auto insurance as part of our comprehensive?
Right, with the SKIP is our school cooperative insurance pool.
Yeah. Is that why we never talk about it? Because it's just one big, it's part of that cooperative and everything's just lumped together, it's not individualized? Is that how they do that?
Right.
And we've been part of the cooperative for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's really, the best way to pool.
Yeah.
So there are, I don't know if it's in board book, but you can, you're looking at Form 100, right?
Yes,
Insurance
sorry,
management.
yeah,
So you
mhm.
can compare it, so this is the way we have it written, Press Plus, but then if you compare it to Press, they have some slightly different language. They have one that catastrophic accident, but that pertains to grades 9 through 12, so we don't have that in ours. But they do have comprehensive property insurance covering a broad range of causes of loss involving building and personal property.
Mm-hmm.
The coverage amount shall normally be for the replacement cost or the insurable value. So that's in Press, but that's not in part of ours. So I'm not sure if that's a conversation to have, or,
So what you just read is exactly what's in the version that's in board book. Is it,
so which one is?
it's the last two sentences of number 1 is comprehensive property insurance. Everything above that is the liability and then the property. There's just not
Oh, I see
a
it. Okay, never mind, sorry.
specific call out for
There's
auto.
it's just listed differently in the press.
And I'm not gonna worry about it here, because
Workers'
all I
comp-
wanted to hear was Jim say we have auto insurance, because that's gonna really concern me if we don't.
Employee insurance programs is our own language, so
Okay.
it's not in press. So I guess we
all?
condense, number
Alright.
one is longer in our
Okay.
press plus than it is in press. In press, it's
Okay.
2 separate bullets.
So do we know an employee insurance program, what we're referencing there?
I don't know for sure. I would assume it's health
it was-
insurance.
That's a different cooperative.
Right, but it lists under policy, the insurance program includes employee insurance programs.
That sounds like health insurance.
That's what I thought why we have it in there. Just like sometimes a lot of our policies, our press plus will say to like see the like collective bargaining agreement.
I was just gonna say, that's a collective bargaining agreement thing, so does it need to be in policy?
Well,
We cite, there's a lot of
but the
policies
part
where
that's
we
in
cite
collective
it.
bargaining is really more the portion that employees pay.
Okay.
It's not that they don't have insurance as an option.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how I interpret it, but
So the policy is that we will provide them insurance, the collective bargaining is how we split that cost.
Mhm.
Okay, that's fair.
Could we, I don't know, this actually might be, Kathy, like a typo. Like, I think 1 is liability coverage to ensure that whole paragraph. And then number 2 should be comprehensive property insurance.
That's what I
3
think.
should be workers' comp,
Yeah,
4
number
should be
4
employee
should be
insurance. So 1,
And if we're gonna make that update, I'd love to just slide in auto insurance in here too. Because that's just, I mean, you have everything except that one thing in here, so if we're gonna try to be exhaustive with what we want to be purchasing, then we might as well just call it out. But that's, when I first read it, that's what I was thinking, is 1 should be liability, 2 should be property, 3 should be comp, 4 should be auto, 5 should be employee insurance programs. So, I'm not gonna, I don't think it's a huge deal, but if we're gonna make an update to it, that feels like a change that we should probably consider. But we have auto insurance, so that's all I care about. We have it. All right. Because those costs are insane right now. The only other question I had was more of a comment. I just thought it was I've been thinking a lot about the scores and everything that we were talking about last year, and just thinking through this year of like, you know, what are the resources we need to fast track kids back to standards, or, you know, knowing grade level materials and things like that. And so I just thought it was, I kind of chuckled when I opened this one, talking specifically about our education philosophy and students will be academically proficient and all that kind of stuff. So I guess all just timing with school starting and all that kind of stuff. So no other comments other than just the timing of reading this policy was interesting with other things I've been thinking about.
yeah, I also didn't know we had I was reading for those involved on the kind of family and community partnership aspect, the parental involvement policy. Again, I didn't make any recommended changes. Our language is slightly different in that we use the word the child's school as opposed to like the district. Press uses district language. We use more the individual child's school language, but those are really the key differences. I found that one to be interesting. I was unaware we had a policy on parental involvement. I think it coincides well with our goals that for family and community partnerships, and I don't know that there were any other changes that people would think to make.
No, it did not immediately come to mind that we had one either, so I don't have any suggestions for change, but just like you said, that connection there, we've been working on it, so I thought it was interesting that we did have a specific policy around it, so at least we're holding to that with our strategic plan and the family and community partnerships aspect of it. On the, I guess so we're gonna put this will be on the regular agenda for 2 weeks from now, and I'm just thinking about the educational philosophy one. If we're gonna evaluate and make updates to that, do you think is that something that would be accomplished in 2 weeks for a vote, or would you need more time for that?
that one
or-
there is the new one, there's
one's
2
on there.
versions in there.
Oh, is there?
Yep, and so the second version, I think it's listed as It says policy 610, it says policy 610 with new strategic plan, mission, motto, and goals. So
Oh, I
we're all
totally
set there.
overlooked that
Yep.
one. Okay, I'll read that one. I did not see that before tonight's meeting. Okay.
Yeah, these aren't, what was the date? September
7th revision, yeah.
and
the 29th.
20-something, when they're due back.
Oh, when they're due. I thought you meant there's a date in board book that says one was added June 27th and one was added July 7th.
Oh, no.
September 28th.
Yeah, so. We've got time, but ideally at the August, regular business meeting can get these small ones through. But yeah, five-year reviews are nice because it does just allow you to better familiarize yourself with the policies that we have. Again, 2 of them, well, actually about 3 of them were new to me. The life-sustaining treatment one was new to me, parental involvement, et cetera. So.
Cool. Anything else? Anybody, any other questions? Nope. Okay. We will move on to facilities then. Construction update from Joel.
There's a very good memo from Ramesh in Board Book, but basically it said that as of July, middle of July, the project was about 75% complete. And then it also notes a couple construction issues that came up that actually added about 60,000 each to the project cost, so a total of an extra 126,000. Neither of these issues is desired, but also neither is really surprising. Water in the ground and then some bad soil in the parking lot. Underground issues are always the bane of most construction projects. So that does increase the budget slightly, or sorry, not budget, cost of the project slightly, because there was a contingency previously, but I think we're using that contingency
I think this
up.
goes beyond the contingency. So actually, Jim and I have been exploring, we believe formal board action does need to happen at the August 16th meeting based on the dollar amount. But it's also important to note that these were sort of emergency conditions that had to be addressed.
That's
It's not like
why
they could
I'm-
pause
I'm-
construction and wait for board action, but the board will probably sort of authorize Jim to the district to spend this money.
Yes, and the water item definitely had to be mitigated prior to doing the
Yeah.
additional basement work, so that's a non-negotiable item. The solution seems reasonable, some pumps and drain tile, and then the parking lot, it's a recommendation from the soil consultant, so probably reasonable as well.
Sounded like that was an MWRD requirement. If I read that
It
correctly.
was, if you read it, it's that we had to do some
Minor revisions. to the
minor
parking lot
revisions, but the bigger, sorry, there's 2 items. One, the water in the basement would have changed the discharge into the water into the sewer system, which is where the MWRD permit needs to be modified.
still. Okay.
And then if you look at the memo, item 3, parking lots, MWRD had comments on the parking lots. And that's all about, if you remember, there's a gravel infill area that's used to absorb and store some of the water prior to it getting into the sewer. So MWRD would have had a comment on that. That's what they care about.
Okay. So
Water.
number 4 doesn't have anything to do with MWRD. It just said that
No,
the soil
that's-
is poor. That has nothing to do with.
That's just, they dug up the parking lot, somebody did soil tests, said it was too soft,
Okay.
and now you have to mitigate.
Okay.
And their mitigation, like I said, is undercuts and soil disposal. Undercuts just means they're digging out the soft stuff and putting in probably new gravel and making a stronger base.
Okay. I mean, the pictures from inside the building we're not good, so. Personally, I'm fine with a post-approval because that looks pretty nasty and that needed to be fixed.
Yeah,
So-
the seepage, I mean, I know when my neighbor had his basement dug out, they were finding water all the time, so, and
Yeah.
everybody knows that there's,
This is not a surprise to me, like that you say, "Hey, we dug a hole, we found water." Yeah, shocker. So,
yeah,
okay.
so.
All right. Okay. Anything else?
No.
Alright.
There is a meeting scheduled for,
It's August 17th, so
August
it's the day
17th, which is the day after,
the board meeting.
but that was scheduled a while ago.
This is when I also just say it's when really pleased to have a construction manager and Ramesh specifically.
Mhm.
Just obviously monitoring these details that take a lot of technical expertise on behalf of the district. And also, at this point, just tightly sort of reviewing and managing the project, because I think this week everyone hit the nervous button, like, is it really gonna be ready to go? I talked to him yesterday and he said yes, because he has the team on a very specific schedule daily at this point, so.
And just to note, because I was going to do this calculation, I saw Ramesh called it out. It's a 3.56% change. So 126,000 sounds like a lot, but relatively speaking, it's a minor overage. And yeah, I guess that's it. So just to call that out, it's about 3%. So this is going to be 3.5% because you said we ate up all of our contingency. So this 3.5% is in addition to the original budget that was approved after contingencies and
The
everything.
I'd have to get deeper into it, but on the memo, item 5 at the end, there's a net change to the contract of 60,610. And it's that net change that we'll have to approve.
Okay, so it's okay, so the first problem was absorbed. The second problem cannot be absorbed. And that's in
Correct.
county, okay, all right. That's not how I read it. 'Cause he said the total cost of this additional work is $126,026.90, blah, blah, blah. The original contract was for $3,535,000. This represents a 3.56, so it's really just that extra 60,000 that's adding to the budget increase or the total cost increase. Okay. All right.
It's unrelated to Blythe, but I believe under facilities, am I right to assume like Hollywood tuck pointing is all done, Hauser lockers? I know my daughter's in the step up to Hauser week, and I'm like, what did the locker
Right.
look like? Did you, she, was it not able to?
They have the integrated lock and they're a little brighter blue, but I don't know
Okay,
that
I was
to
like, were they blue? I
the
was like, I don't
layperson, they
know.
look that different. I
Oh,
don't
you
know.
were
Yeah.
here last meeting. They had
No.
them all in the
Yeah.
hallways and everything.
Yeah, they were in the
What?
hallways.
They were
They're
just
beautiful.
holes in the
They did,
wall
yeah.
and,
They're a beautiful blue color.
yeah, really nice.
Cool.
But they, last meeting,
Beautiful
they had
lockers.
all the old ones out, the new ones were there in their boxes, were partially assembled and ready to go.
So they presume they're in at this point.
Nothing is done. I mean, Ramesh has assured me that like Hauser's like 99% and they are demobilizing from the auditorium. And Hollywood, he said, is like 95% done. And Blythe is at a slightly lower, like 92. He gave it to me all in percentages,
wow.
but with a clear assurance that everything would be done for the school to open and for construction to be out of the way. Casimir and I are still discussing contingency plans for Blythe because we're still nervous. So,
So I was
and it
gonna
would
prepared.
be, that's going to be the library and the music room. And if worst case scenarios, we do push in library and push in music for a week or two. And he told me not to worry about that, but we do have a plan just in case. So school will open and the impact would be on our specials, just the where they're taught. He assured us that the gymnasium will be completely ready, and that's gym and lunch. Because Casimir's like, they'll eat outside if the weather's good. It's like, so we have plans.
All right. Anything else? We do not have any attachments under personnel, but I'll just double check with both of you. Anything you want to bring up, or?
No,
Okay.
yeah, no, nothing for now. We'll look to start our conversations again with the new school year.
And I know Jim mentioned during the budget piece that Like I said, not all our positions are filled. We have some cafeteria worker positions still open, but all of our certified positions are filled and have been for a while, so that's good news. So I didn't want that to be misconstrued or misunderstood.
All right. And Kathy, I'm going to assume no additional public comment?
Correct.
Okay. So with that, future meeting dates, we will be having a regular business meeting on August 16th, 2 weeks from today in the Hauser Learning Resource Library. I will not be present for that. That's the first day. I couldn't be here. We were doing a family vacation, the last one before school starts, and I couldn't work around it. So Joel's gonna lead that meeting. Martha and I are gonna meet next week to start planning for the next agenda. I kind of gave a couple of previews of some stuff that we've already talked about, but that'll be finalized next week. September 6th, we're gonna have a committee of the whole meeting at Blythe Park, and September 20th, we'll have a regular business meeting at Hauser Learning Resource Center. And that is it. Meeting adjourned.